Hello, my name is Mike Webster from Flagship Coaching and Publishing. I'm sitting here in a small town called Chatou, just outside Paris. I'm with Ian Wilkinson, quizmaster and author of A Song Before Breakfast.
So, my name is Ian Wilkinson. I'm 56 years old. I'm from Wigan in the north of England. I've been a very sporty person all my life. I played all sports. I was a PE teacher for 20 years. I played rugby and cricket at high levels. In 1986, I toured with the Lancashire Rugby Union on a tour of the Auvergne in central France. And it's from that point in my life that I really wanted to live in France. My life completely changed because after that, I wanted to live in France, learn the language, and basically do anything that would keep me in France. My full-time job is being a quizmaster in a couple of bars in Lyon. I do a quiz once a week in the Wallace Bar and Flanagan's Bar, and I'm the animator. I'm basically the guy who asks the questions and does the animations, plays the games. I think everybody would like to write a book, and they say everybody's got a book in them. I, as a PE teacher, always wanted to describe things, describe the weather, how it affects the life of a PE teacher. Obviously, that wouldn't make for a great book. But I decided once a relationship had been terminated that it was time that I wrote a book. I started writing the book in 1998. The first thing I wrote was the ending, which seems a bit strange, but I knew the ending. And the hard part was to write a decent story for the girl on the cover, because the book is for the girl on the cover. And the reason for the picture on the cover is that I took that photograph, so that the whole book is very, very personal for me. It took me at least 6-7 years to write. I spent a lot of time, I suffered from depression, and so I could only work in very short periods, but eventually the story came together. So it was a long time, it took me many years to write the book. So the book is about a PE teacher called Fraser Boone, who works in a large comprehensive school in Wigan, and he agrees to host the school's new French assistant. He's a complete Francophile. He wants to learn French, but he's not very good at it. So he thinks that by having a French assistant with him, it would help him learn French. This obviously creates tension between him and his girlfriend, and the story leads on from there. It traces the growing relationship that Fraser has with Aurélie, who's the French assistant, and also the tension it creates between him and his girlfriend. He ambled up the hallway into the lounge and fell into the large cream settee, and then reached for one of Angela's glossy weekly magazines. He became aware that the sound on the television was gradually lessening. He looked up and saw Angela leaning against the white frame of the door at the lounge door, staring down at him, pointing the control at the television like a pistol. "What?" he asked with a puzzled expression. She remained motionless with her arms still folded. Well, what?" he asked, slowly closing the magazine. "Well, what's she like?" Fraser returned to his magazine, flicked a page and said impassively, "Kylie Minogue? Yeah, nice ass." He realised that his humour was not being appreciated. "Oh, that? She's all right." "Better than you expected?" "I wasn't expecting anything," replied Fraser warily, continuing to flick the pages. "So she's not German?" "Well, she didn't come in a Volkswagen, if that's what you mean. We didn't get a lot of time to chat," said Fraser, sensing that he was being interrogated. "Well, is she big, fat, small, blonde, black?" continued Angela, slowly, moving towards the settee as she spoke. "Does she have a hunchback, a wooden leg?" Fraser closed the magazine and timed a look of disdain with its dropping noisily to the floor. "She's petite." "Oh, petite, is she?" Angela smiled, managing not to look pleased. "Yeah, that's French for small," Angie murmured, looking irritated. "Let's stick to English, Fraser. You know what I'm like about France." Angela sat down with her back against the other arm of the settee and lifted her legs across Fraser's knees, tossing the remote by his side. It's a pity she's only staying at yours for 2 weeks then. She could have sorted out that jungle of yours. She pulled her knees under her chin and thought for a while. Fraser picked up the magazine and flicked another page, bracing himself for the next question. And does she look French? She said with penetrating eyes. Yes, she does. I left her practicing the can-can and whistling the Marseillaise, said Fraser, reverting back to sarcasm and trying to look bored. Look, can we drop it, Ange? She's only here for 2 weeks. So the next excerpt is again from the beginning of the book, and Fraser and Aurelie have decided to go on a bike ride without Angela's knowledge. And this, again, it's one of those incidents in the book which actually happened to me, and I've incorporated it into the plot of the book. You still okay? He called. Is this a big hill? He heard. Yes, this is it. Bon courage. Aurelie increased her speed as though she was making a run for it. Fraser moved slowly to reserve his strength. He watched in admiration as Aurelie arrived at the sheer juncture, which disappeared to even greater heights, and he saw that she seemed to be moving along effortlessly. As he arrived at the same spot, he nervously dropped the gears lower and lower until his bike had imparted all its help and changed from alleviating his pain to inducing it. More worryingly, Aurelie seemed to be increasing the distance between them. He stood up to let his body weight push the pedals down and blew out furiously through clenched teeth. The bike began to wobble drunkenly across the road of its own accord, but still he fought and forced his way up the hill. His desperate breaths became deeper and deeper, mutating beyond his control into incomprehensible shouts of encouragement and distress. With calves and thighs on fire, he sensed that his lightheadedness might be the precursor of unconsciousness, but seeing that Aurelie had almost reached the top, and that an old man had appeared and was walking down towards him with a small white Highland terrier, his competitive nature ruled out stopping. But the bike began fighting against him again, as though its murderous intent was to drag him back to the depths, and it was then he knew he was beaten. The old man knelt with his dog as Fraser approached, and in an attempt to minimise his defeat, he tried to offer his excuses to the bemused spectator. But the strain which had emptied the last drop of energy in his legs had unwittingly done the same for his lungs and larynx. What was intended as a dignified and friendly acknowledgement of failure emerged like the death throes of a slaughtered cow. The old man reeled back in haste as the exhausted rider and his disobedient machine came to their inevitable stop. It was then that Fraser tried to put his feet to the ground, but it was useless. They were trapped in the stirrups. Slowly and without resistance, he began to keel over to his left, still leaning forward, holding on grimly to the handlebars as if frozen to them. He hit the pavement like a cardboard cutout of his former magnificent self, with no other movement than to be sick in front of the dog. I got the name Fraser Boone from a friend I knew years ago, and we're going back 35 years, and I remember thinking to myself, if I ever wrote a book, the main character would be Fraser Boone, because it's just a good name. I don't know how he feels about me using his name. It's not Fraser Boone the person in the book. The Fraser Boone in the book is me. So I don't know whether Fraser Boone knows about it, or but it's not Fraser Boone from Preston. I think a lot of people would be interested in reading the book who basically went to school. People who wonder what the teachers are really like in the staff room and what they get up to away from school. I think as a children, you tend to think as your school teachers as just being teachers, and that is it. I think anybody who wants to know what the life is in the staff room and the banter amongst the staff will get a really good impression and a lot of amusement out of the book. I think that it's very easy to think that teachers just go home at night and then they just come and the whole life is teaching, and it's not at all. And one of the things that I like about my book is that because I'm a PE teacher, I have to look at what the weather's like, I have to look at the trees, the grass, the state of the pitches, things like that. And I always remember going out to a lesson with the guy I used to teach with, and we used to comment on how the buds were coming out because we wanted warm weather, because we spent 4 or 5 months running through mud and refereeing after schools, And so it's very important to me. I always wanted to describe that. And I also remember when I was in France years ago, there was a huge storm. And I remember looking at this storm coming up the valley and thinking to myself, I'd love to be able to describe that. And that's another thing that I did in the book. So I think it's describing things, not just nature, but people. You know, it's very difficult to describe personalities, but it's also very interesting to either invent a figure or maybe embellish a figure. But I've invented one or two people for the book, and it was good fun doing that. And it was also good fun. One or two people asked me, could they be in the book as I was writing it? And I won't tell you which characters, but I put some characters in just because they wanted to be in, but they fitted in perfectly to the story. There's a lot of things in the book that are also written just for the girl. There's certain words she would use that we used to laugh about together, and there's certain place names that we laughed about. And so there's quite a bit in the book that only she would actually understand. It doesn't mean that anybody else won't understand the story. I'll give you an example. For example, when she comes back after Christmas, he's playing Suede on the CD, and Suede was her favourite group. So the story at the time was she liked Suede, I liked Suede. I spent a lot of money on a CD, and two of the tracks were missing that she had, and that was a joke between us. So I decided to put that Fraser was listening to Suede when she came in. Very small example, insignificant, but she'll know why I put Suede. I did only want one copy, well, one copy for her, one copy for me. But I self-published originally, and I basically had so many friends in Lyon all wanted to read it, so I ordered 80 copies, which I sold on the first night. So since then I sold other copies, and fortunately now it's been taken up by a mainstream publisher, which I'm obviously delighted about.